She had tortured hundreds, maybe thousands, in the name of understanding and reason. Torture made sense. You truly saw what a person was made of in more ways than one when you began to slice into them. That was a phrase she'd used on numerous occasions. It usually made her smile. Semirhage, the gathering storm. Hello and welcome back. I am here with my good friend Tracy.
I'm here with my delightful friend Amber.
And this is the Road to Tarvalin. Today, back with our Westlands 101s.
The spooky edition.
The spooky edition, it's back. We do this yearly. I think our first one was Shadow Spawn. Then after that, it was
Bubbles of Evil.
Bubbles of Evil. Yes.
Yeah, I only remember because you had to remind me when I was like, what about Bubbles of Evil? And you were like, we did that last year.
Yeah. But I guess today we are going with Robert Jordan's take on Yosef Mengele, only he made it a woman, and it is Semirhage. And I have to say, she is probably, well, maybe the most terrifying of the Forsaken, especially a lot of the times because the Forsaken can be kind of cartoony, but she is just on a whole another level of evil.
Yes.
Textbook sadist. Sadist.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually, because yes.
Yeah, textbook sadist. She is someone who really takes pleasure in pain and humiliation and punishment.
Like true pleasure. Doesn't even think twice about it being a source of pleasure for her. She's like, oh yes, I've earned this. I've earned this.
Yeah. And like most of our Westlands 101 episodes, the first half will be spoiler free, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty stuff from the books that will definitely spoil things for you if you haven't made it through the series.
Yes. Yeah, big spoilers. So, be good to yourselves. Don't move too far ahead unless you're ready to, just be completely spoiled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Semirhage's name, before taking the name Semirhage, was Namine Damodar Bone.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how you want to pronounce that, maybe that doesn't sound quite like how you read it in your head. But one of the things that really, I guess, shocked me that I didn't realize at first is that she's from Seanchan.
What, like originally?
Yeah, that's her nationality, from Seanchan. Which makes things later on maybe not so ironic, but it makes things make sense considering some of her favorite items that she uses.
Okay, don't mind me, but is that possible for her to be of Seanchan nationality when Seanchan didn't exist as a place until like Arthur Hawkwing's time? Like, are they maybe, because I saw that on the wiki article as well, that they had her nationality listed as Seanchan, but I just assumed that that had more to do with her role that she chooses later on. Also, that wiki article was full of contradictions. Like, no offense to the people who read it, because truthfully, I am so appreciative for everyone who works on it, but there are a lot of contradictions in that article. And it was maybe not a lot, maybe just a few. But it was like, I went from that to other places to my Wheel of Time companion, and I was interested to see if like some of those discrepancies showed up in your reference book, because you have the big white book and I don't have that.
Did look her up in that. Let me open it real quick because I'm actually on her page.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually say in here where she is from. But the thing is that before the breaking of the world, she did associate with she was an Aes Sedai, not a White Tower Aes Sedai, but
Right.
this era's version of Aes Sedai.
Yes. Yeah.
And we do know that before the formation of the Hall of the Tower, that there were Aes Sedai in Seanchan squabbling, breaking apart the continent, which is why when Arthur Pendrag went there, he was able to kind of turn people onto the fact like, look, these people are no good. Look what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
There were Aes Sedai in Seanchan long, long ago, but she also was a well known Aes Sedai at the time. So I don't know where her story began.
Mm-hmm.
If there were Aes Sedai on Seanchan, were they looking for women that could channel over there and bringing them back to the Westlands? That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I wasn't expecting to get like kind of stuck, if you will, on a topic of her like nationality origination, if that makes sense. How fascinating. I just wanted to make a mention of the fact that she is an individual with three names, which we know in the Age of Legends is like a status symbol. And I also just want to like briefly point out that this is another indicator that the Age of Legends is not a utopian society. You would not have social structures like that if this were a utopian society. You know what I mean?
Like class
Yeah, like
and honorific.
yeah, like you're lifted above everybody else kind of thing. So,
Well, I feel like that's the same thing as like doctors having the opportunity to list like Dr.
oh,
Will Smith on
interesting.
their driver's license, you know?
He's not a doctor, he's hanging in the wild, wild west.
Right? Or like you can even hear like you can check professor and then that will come up on all of your paperwork. I don't know if that
Okay.
has
No,
anything
I
to
can
do
see
with
that.
utopian, but like I'm not saying that that doesn't go along with your theory, but I don't know.
No, I always like it when you have like an alternate opinion or view of something that I'm not seeing in the same way. I love that.
Yeah, I don't know, but that still doesn't change the fact that when I see someone who introduces themselves as, I'm a doctor so and so, I don't roll my eyes. I'm Professor so and so. Don't call me by my first name. All right, all right. All right, fancy pants.
I did have a professor when I was in school, just like one of them who was very like, I am Professor so and so, and that is what you will call me because I have earned it. And I was like, all right, all right,
Yeah,
fine.
but I mean, I mean, to me, that's a roll of the eyes
No,
because
I get it.
any
I get it.
profession that you do and you do well and you've given a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time and effort into that, I mean,
Yeah.
why don't they get a fancy name? I mean,
Right. That's how I feel sometimes. Like I'm like I'd love to have like a PhD of some kind, but truth be told, that's so much work. And I mean, I've already put a lot of work into like everything I've done. Can I just get like an honorific? Can I give myself one?
sure, why not?
I declare that I have put in. That sounds like a Semirhage move, though. Truth be told, like her ego is just out there, and I like. There's so much about her that while I'm going, oh my god, you're so awful, that I'm also like, yeah, yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from. You know, you're terrible, but I don't not understand some of your opinions in some ways. Not the torture part, just the like, don't judge me part. You know.
Well, she deserves to be judged.
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying what she was doing was right by any means or
Well,
that
let's
I
let's
like
get
yeah.
into what she was doing, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, she was a restorer, and what that means is before the formation of the White Tower, we're talking about the Age of Legends. We had the Aes Sedai of this time going around and mainly focusing on healing. Some of the
Yeah.
Forsaken actually did similar things. Like Grendel was a great healer of the mind, but Namine, aka Semirhage, she was a great healer, but the thing was is that while she was healing people, she took a little bit too much delight in the fact that she made her healings
Mm-hmm.
painful to the people that were being healed. And when the Hall of the Servants found out about this, they basically gave her the option of being severed or
Mm-hmm.
being bound by what their version of the oath rod is. So a
Mm-hmm.
binder. And
Mm-hmm.
that's another terangrial thingamajig where
Mm-hmm.
basically if they say we're going to use this thing on you and after we use it on you, you will not physically be able to commit the crime that you have been doing. You
Mm-hmm.
can't. Your
Mm-mm.
body won't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this gave her the idea of choosing to go along with the side of the shadow. And that's where she becomes one of the Forsaken.
Mm-hmm.
And she was even clearly, she was with the other Forsaken that are trapped in the boar during the breaking of the world on Lews Theron's strike.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
with his 100 and maybe a few more or less companions.
It does seem like a really, precise number. Like, I don't know if I believe that.
I will take 99 of you, a complete 100, no
Right.
more, no less.
Or like Steven showed up and he was sick. And so like it was 99 instead of 100, but they were like, no, we're still going with 100.
We're
Don't worry about
rounding
it.
up.
Yeah, we're rounding up. We're rounding up. Forget about Steven. It's fine. He'll get better later. Lucky Steven wasn't there. I think the part about Semirhage that stood out to me the most. I mean, I don't know where you would like to go from the ceiling away from the Forsaken and the board. Do you have a direction in mind?
No, I kind of just wanted to give like the most, I guess, quick background on her as a Forsaken, like why she is one.
You did.
But I do want to talk about some of the things that she was involved in during the War of Power, which is before the breaking of the world. And I think this is, in my mind, one of the things that I would love to see as a part of
Mhm.
these Wheel of Time prequels that have been talked
Mhm.
about and mentioned.
Mhm.
Because the War of Power is just like a really, really long time of battles, but it's
Mhm.
magic battles, so to
Right?
speak. So, like,
And dark.
we've got
Dark.
channelers on both sides just really
Mhm.
going at it and
Yep.
pretty much total destruction of the nations after that takes place and there's the breaking of the world. Things get even worse, but
Mhm.
everything was pretty much thrown into upheaval. So during the War of Power, there were actually areas, nations, cities, lands that were taken by
Mhm.
certain Forsaken and for the
Mhm.
side of the Shadow. And Semirhage was actually put in charge of some of these territories. And dear God, it is just, it's some of the most like
Ah.
sadistic stuff ever. But
Mhm.
I guess like I just picture her being really bored and kind of like luxuriously laying around and then making the subjects of her territories just flat out torture each other for fun. Like that's what she
Mhm.
did for her spare time.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this was experimental or if it was just for gratification.
I was actually gonna say, from what I can understand from what I read, was that like she does it in an experimental way. Like she wants to find out what it takes to break a human being, and she uses other people and is like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to torture them, and I'm just going to like file all this information away so that I know. And I mean, like she uses that information later on, and it's just gruesome information and acts that she commits as, the book unfolds even. But the War of Power was exactly where I wanted to go cuz like this would just be even just the War of Power alone. Like be such a good movie. Such a good
Yeah.
movie.
And when I'm
Yeah.
thinking about her, like what makes her tick,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm saying I don't know if she's doing it for experimentation or for gratification, I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of trying to get like into the headspace of her. Like, does
Mm-hmm.
she actually want to make experiments because she's interested
Mm.
on how the body works and like
Mm-hmm.
how to flip people and turn people? Or at the root of Semirhage, is it just because she likes torture? So giving any opportunity to use it, she can have an excuse
Mm-hmm.
and say, oh, well, I'm studying people, I'm trying to figure things out. But maybe she just likes it.
Hmm. Maybe it's a bit of both.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of all of these really horrible people in our own
Mm-hmm.
history, especially, I mean, Yosef Mengele, definitely. He's the one that I think is just, I really feel like this is the person that Robert Jordan kind of decided to like use bits and pieces of this person and stick
Mm-hmm.
them into a villain character for his books.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy was just, I mean, we're talking about crimes of humanity on
Mm-hmm.
probably the largest scale. I think that when you think of people who are just that evil, he's
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the very first ones that you would find. Like if you went on Google and was like, who is the most evil person ever? Like I am assuming he would probably show up on that list.
Can I do that real quick? Who are the most evil
Yeah, do
people
it. Go for it.
ever?
But I mean, he was a Nazi doctor who
Yep.
he took a special interest in twins and he would
Ugh.
torture one and kind of use the other one to like do a side by side comparison and see like what can be done to a person while using the other one as like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's all of these conspiracy theories that he's still alive, but I mean, he fled to South America. Yeah, that's the running joke about if you're South American and have German ancestry, it's like, yeah, you're probably related to a German person who fled. But
Yeah. Not surprisingly, Hitler's number one, Stalin's number two.
okay. I mean, same group, same group.
Same group.
So
Yeah, they're all together. I mean, that's just it. It's like that group, they keep popping up on this list. It's just like 15 of like, oh, Maximilian Robespierre is on here. That's wild. Oddly enough, Mengele is not. I think this list is wrong though. I don't agree with this list. So that's all I'm saying. Google, I don't agree with your first choice. So no,
but
I love
yeah,
I love the historic connection, the real world connection that like people can actually be this evil. And I actually really appreciate the fact that Jordan gave this incredibly scary demeanor to a woman instead of putting it on another man. Because I mean,
he does like to flip his like the stereotype sometimes, you know?
I think it's necessary, to keep things kind of like fresh, if you will. Like instead of it always being like the person you absolutely expect to be this evil, for it to be someone who is known as a healer, world famous healer in the Age of Legends.
Yeah.
That goes along with being a woman most of the time, like, but to become a torturer.
It's not very often that the torturer is a woman, you know, just in
Mm-hmm.
literature or whatever. But
And in history.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
do think too that she used torture as a way to kind of further along her career as a Forsaken. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like
Oh, for sure.
she used this to her advantage when there's all of these networks and whatnot where
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to figure out who's actually a dark friend or who's really a traitor. And
Mm-hmm.
she was someone to where she would capture people to make sure that they were actually who they say they are. And a lot of the times,
Mm-hmm.
these people that were captured, upon figuring out that Semirhage was their captor, like they
Mm-hmm.
would kill themselves.
Mm-hmm.
while they were
Yep.
imprisoned rather than facing her. And I think that's just one of the reasons why she is so creepy, why she is so terrifying and
Mm-hmm.
scary.
Yeah, I had written down her reputation for excessive cruelty made it so special precautions had to be taken with her prisoners to keep them from committing suicide. And I believe like there were stories of prisoners who would chew through their wrists to get
Hmm.
out of their like chains. Like, good lord, how very animalistic and desperate does that feel? How terrifying is this woman? Like, she is scary. One of the things that she liked to do that I think is just crazy is replace people's blood with various other substances.
Yeah, I mean, I think this really just goes down to her getting pleasure out of it and not
Mm-hmm.
really necessarily like her wanting to make discoveries or something. Because if you think that someone's going to actually live having their blood changed to something,
Right.
I don't think that you're a very smart person. The thing is about her is she just has such an intimidating presence via
Yeah.
the legend of Semirhage. Like she
Right.
is so well known and so well feared that it comes up later in her storyline that it makes her such a force to be reckoned with just because of the status of her name being so
Yeah.
well known and
Yep.
feared. I mean, she was captured during the War of
Yep.
Power, and
That's
she
what I
was
was
so
just thinking.
scary that her jailers freed her. Freed her.
They smuggled her out. Like,
Yeah.
all she had to do was persistently tell them about the things that she had done to other people. And they were like, okay, okay, okay. Please don't do that to us ever. And we will get you out of here.
And we didn't talk about what she looks like either.
Yeah,
So,
I was just thinking about that too, because when you were talking about like she's already kind of an intimidating presence. Like, she's tall. Like, she's over 6 feet tall.
yeah, she's real slender, long limbed, long
Mm-hmm.
fingers, really dark skin, dark eyes,
Yep.
and she likes to dress all in black. And this dates back to her having a rivalry with Lanfear, who
In
always
fear.
dresses in white.
Yeah.
And so that's, I guess, the the forsaken joke, I guess, that
Right.
Semirag is trying to kind of like carve out her own thing and
Her
have
own
her
look.
own style. Yeah.
Yeah, outside of Lanfear.
Hmm. So, would you like to jump into the spoiler topics?
The last thing I want to mention about Semirog is we have her to thank for the 13 Murdral, 13 Aes Sedai can bring a channeler to the Dark One. Discovery, I guess you could say. And that definitely has an impact later on. I don't know what she was doing that she discovered this. I don't.
Yeah, she definitely has a curiosity
Hmm.
about Murdral.
She
And we
does.
see that later on in another chapter where she's thinking to herself, but she does have a curiosity there, and I think she thinks that Fades and Murdral are strange creatures, but she
Hmm.
wants to study them. So I can imagine, air quotes here, her studying them.
Hmm.
Good times for the Murdral. Good times.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a part later on where she says her curiosity had led her to implied torture of Murdral. That was like they don't even know how they do the things they do, and she knew for sure because she's a lady of pain, and that goes for Murdral too.
Yeah, she doesn't discriminate on who she tortures, apparently.
Nope. Mm-mm. Yikes. Okay. That was the last thing that I wanted to mention because I just thought it was really interesting that that was something that she had discovered during her ruling of regions and rampaging as head torturer and discoverer of weird things.
All right, let's jump into the spoiler topics.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I had on my mind was just how terrifying her POV introduction is. Out of
Mm-hmm.
all of the Forsaken, that Lord of Chaos chapter
Mm-hmm.
is just wild.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, too, this is probably why this book, when I started this book, it was so unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of like, who can you trust? Who can't you trust in this book? Where almost every character that starts showing up, it's like, you're sweating because it's like, oh no, like our
Mm-hmm.
dear good people, Rand and our Emmons Field folks, like, how are we gonna keep them safe? And we
Mm-hmm.
get just these early chapters in Lord of Chaos come out swinging in terms of it's really stressful and it's really unsettling and it's
Mm-hmm.
scary.
Mm-hmm. Very. And she's so methodical. I think that's the word that comes to mind. And she tries to be. Like, this isn't even just something that's like enjoyable for her, it's also second nature for her. Like, she knows the things to do. I think there's a part where, like, in this chapter, I think it's in Threads of Threads Woven of Shadow is the chapter. But she basically says, like, no one knows the interior of a person's mind as well as she does. And she knows how to stimulate pain centers as well as pleasure centers. But she like sets what she calls like a net around the pain center for an Aes Sedai that's been captured. She has an Aes Sedai and a warder to torture and get information from. And our good old buddy Shadar Haran
Yeah, he's like
is,
guarding the door like a
yeah,
creepy ass bouncer.
right?
So in this chapter, she's got two victims here.
Mm-hmm.
She tortures both of them. The Aes Sedai lives longer than the warder,
Mm-hmm.
but the warder she tortures with pleasure, and
Uh-huh.
then she ties off this weave and starts
Mm-hmm.
thinking about other things. I think this is when she's talking about Shadar Haran, and she's thinking about this and that and the other. And when she snaps out of it, she's killed the warder,
Mm-hmm.
and the Aes Sedai is screaming. And now
Mm-hmm.
she knows more about this Aes Sedai warder bond, which always
Mm-hmm.
kind of confused me a little bit because if she's been around for a while and the Forsaken always like to, even in this chapter, she's kind of scoffing at this woman who calls herself an Aes Sedai. She's saying, I think she said that you call yourself an Aes Sedai, but you really have no idea like what a real Aes
Mm-hmm.
Sedai was capable of, and you're
Mm-hmm.
nothing compared to my time and the Age of Legends and etc.
Yeah.
So why does she not know how the warder bond works if she's so intelligent? I mean, I kind of feel like even in the Age of Legends, they would have had to have an understanding of what some of these different weaves could do as far as like bonding people. So I don't know about that. It might be a minor inconsistency.
Yeah. There is a part where she talks about it in chapter 6 because when she goes to see the warder, she's like, he's already looks as though he's been experiencing something. And she was like, it looks as though he's been fighting pain. And in her POV, she says, of course, that peculiar bond between Aes Sedai and Warder. Strange that these primitives should have come up with something that none of the chosen understood, yet it was so. From the little she knew, this fellow quite possibly felt at least some of what the other patient was undergoing. Another time that would present interesting possibilities, now it only meant that he thought he knew what he was facing. That's the only indication that, they don't really know anything about it and then they haven't really attempted something like this before. But I also agree with you because, like, why wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, I'm just kind of like pointing out the fact that it's either stupidity or hypocrisy on her behalf. Either she doesn't know, and the Forsaken really don't have a clue half the time when they're constantly saying like how much greater they are and smarter and more intelligent
Mm-hmm.
and et cetera, et cetera. But it's like I don't know. Is it just that way with the Forsaken? Because they are really petty and they are,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, hypocrites. So
Mm-hmm.
often we have Forsaken saying something to one of our protagonists, like, you know, nothing, like the Age of Legends was so much more powerful and
Mm-hmm.
smarter and the technology was better, but at the same time, they're constantly getting whooped by
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
protagonists. So it's
Primitives.
like,
The quote
yeah.
unquote primitives who know nothing about anything. I think it's ego. I think, especially in Semirog's case, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she has a massive ego. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
don't they all? Don't they all?
yeah. And I think if she's absorbed in other things, then she's not. And I mean, at this point, she's also not really, for the most part, in the main section of the Westlands. She's over in Seanchan messing around with Tuon. So her exposure to Aes Sedai and Warders has, since her awakening, has probably been limited. And considering her hatred for them, I can't see her like taking the time that she has for plotting to try to figure out the Warder bond. Like this might be her first experience where she's like, "Oh, well, I guess these primitives have done this thing." Like for her it would be like a child's game, and that's what she thinks of it. So it's beneath her to pay
Yeah,
attention
it
to it.
just, I don't know. For me, it just doesn't check out because we
Oh,
have
yeah.
we have people in the Black Aja. I mean, they have warders themselves. So like
Mhm.
no, oh, the Forsaken don't know what the warder bond really does. Like, come on.
Maybe it's just her. And maybe that's just her assumption. It's not like they're close and sharing their deepest secrets at like slumber parties and stuff, you know? Like these people hate each other.
Yeah, but I feel like word would get around. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
I have no
know.
idea. There are always holes to poke at, always.
Yeah.
I'm with you. It is a potential hole to poke at.
So she, after she wakes up from her, I guess, deep sleep and
Mhm.
the boar, she
Mhm.
does travel to Seanchan and she has this alternate identity of Anath. And
Mhm.
she eventually becomes Tuon's truth speaker.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I guess like her intention here was kind of what we see so often with other Forsaken and other dark friends is kind of like
Mhm.
coming into one area and
Mhm.
manipulating it and trying to kind of take charge and get a
Yes.
position that's higher up. That way you can manipulate things below you. And this
Yeah.
is pretty much what she starts off doing. She does try to have, well, I guess she does. She assassinates the imperial family except for
Mhm.
Tuon.
Mhm.
So I mean, that checks a box for her. Like, very stereotypical Forsaken like behavior. And
Totally.
I guess the only part of her plan that didn't work is that Tuon
Mhm.
lived. And then we
Mhm.
have kind of like this mess in Shan after that.
Mhm. Yep. And I think like one of her, for Semirog at that point, the solution became making Surath Empress and killing Tuon, because Tuon is just like even in the chapter where she's torturing people, she's thinking about Tuon and she refers to her as like her willful charge. I never caught that before. Like I was like, who is she talking about? And like it didn't like have like hit me until much later on. Oh, it's Tuon. She was talking about Tuon, and so she's been there for a minute, like messing around with Tuon. But Tuon doesn't really seem to like fully take in what. her truth speaker is trying to tell her. Like, there's a part in the chapter where she says, "You certainly were not supposed to be afraid of your Sophia," yet Tuon was a little. So my mispronunciation, I'm sorry. Sophia is for truth
Truth
speaker.
speaker. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like she has a bit of fear, and she also, like, later on she says that she wants to resist her truth speaker's advice. Like she listens to everything that Anath slash Semirhage is telling her, but she's like, there's something about this that doesn't feel right. So it's almost like a Ravine Morghese, when Morghese finally is like, something about this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
Tuon's feeling it. She's like, something about this isn't right.
Yeah, and I wonder if I mean, because Morghese and Tuan both have the ability to channel, you know?
Oh,
I
interesting.
just wonder if that was a coincidence where somehow it made Tuan less susceptible to Semirhage in a way. Or maybe just to have
Oh.
like this strange vibe that something is not quite right.
I mean, even as her truth speaker, Semirhage is not really, it doesn't sound like she's really concealing what she looks like. So she's still tall, imposing, like a figure of authority in and of herself. So Tuon being afraid of her kind of makes sense because Tuon's like tiny. She's this tiny, child-sized person, according to Matt. Like, he thinks she's a child the first time he sees her. So Semirhage has got to just tower over her.
Yeah. And this is too where she kind of picks up, I think, her time in Seanchan, this idea of using the domination band, or
Mm-hmm.
it's an item, so a terangrial that, can control whoever you're connected with. But it
Mm-hmm.
only works between two channelers.
Mm-hmm.
So this becomes a part of her plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really do like this chapter. I don't remember what chapter it is, but I think it might be in the
The Gathering Storm.
Gathering Storm. She's posing as Tuan. So first
Mm-hmm.
she's Anath, and now she's
Mm-hmm.
impersonating Tuan herself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first read this chapter, I was really confused because it was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
she started flickering. And I'm like, well, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean? She became taller suddenly. And
Right.
then Rand is there with, I want to say Nynaeve and Min
Mm-hmm.
and Cadsuane and some other
Mm-hmm.
Ashaman. He has this like guard of people
Mm-hmm.
that he's
Mm-hmm.
traveling with, and she starts flickering, and
Mm-hmm.
then Luce Theron just loses it, and
Mm-hmm.
Rand knows immediately who it is, and Semirhage is shooting fire at Rand, and she actually hits him because Min was standing behind Rand, so Rand didn't duck and cover, jump out of the
Mm-hmm.
way, and he loses his hand for it,
Mm-hmm.
which is why you don't bring your girlfriend on these types
To
of
a
missions.
battle. Right. Leave her at home. Men, just stay back, read a book, have a nice glass of wine or something. Like, let him defend himself the way he's going to need to. You don't need to be there. It's fine. It's fine.
What I do think is funny, it's like, oh, but like Min threw a knife at her and she does hit Semirhage with one of her knives, but I think
Oh, thank
Semirhage was
goodness.
already suspended with weaves of air by Cadsuane and Nynaeve at this point, so it's like, Min, did you just throw a knife at a target who can't move? Like,
Out
good
of
on
sheer
ya, I
anger.
guess.
I'm
Yeah.
so mad at you. I'm so mad. Got all these daggers. I didn't get to use them.
Yeah. But this
Yeah, I
chapter
don't
is
know.
pretty important because she casts all this doubt on Rand because she's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're hearing voices from your
Mm-hmm.
past life. You're clearly
Mm-hmm.
insane. And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of those, it's just another. death by a thousand cuts for Rand because he's
Mm-hmm.
already going through so much. And I guess it's just adding fuel to the fire. He's not in a good place. And we see this when he
Mm-hmm.
even loses his hand. He's connected to Min with the bond. And she's like, he's
Mm-hmm.
already given it up. He's already left it behind. He's just
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, not even caring about, losing a limb. And
Mm-hmm.
Nynaeve mistook it for him being in shock, but he just shoves those feelings aside in a very unhealthy way. And all of this is going on. And then we have Cadsuane, who MVP of the hour is just like, yeah, I'm going to have a good time with this one. Like, I look
Mm-hmm.
forward to chatting with you, Semirhage. And it's like, it's almost this moment where Cadsuane, you could start to think that she's almost just as evil as Semirhage because that she has this
Mm-hmm.
real deep understanding of Semirhage that I don't
Mm-hmm.
think very many people do.
Yeah, there's a moment where Cat Swain says that the similarities between the two of them make her insides itch. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I bet they do. I mean, that's how she figures out how to get under Semirog's skin. She's like, what would really like get to me? What would bring me down? And she uses that to get at Semirog.
Yeah, I mean that's how she breaks her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the scene though. I love the scene. Like the way that it's set and everything. By the way, the chapter that you are thinking about is chapter 27, A Plain Wooden Box, and it is in the Gathering Storm.
Okay.
And then this one is Questions of Control, which is chapter 17, I think.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about that one, or was there something else in Semirog's timeline that you'd rather jump into before we kind of
Let me take a
wrap
let me
her story up?
I do find her like even before getting captured, I find her attachment to the Seanchan really interesting that she chooses this path. I like that it gives her an edge when she pretends to be Tuon, but it also is kind of her undoing because one of the Soldam present like recognizes her and like when Semirog later announces she's like, why should I deny who I am? I am Semirog and like one of the Soldam vomits down the front of herself. Like this is how fucking scary this woman is. Like
Mm-hmm.
thousands of years later, somebody throws up at the set like at her name, at her declaring herself. Like, I kinda love it.
No, that's terrifying. I mean,
Right.
I'm thinking of all of the ways that they could do this within the TV show, and it just makes me so sad because I don't think they have the time to
Mm-hmm.
really flesh some of these characters out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I actually have to correct myself. It's not in the Gathering Storm. It's in Knife of Dreams that she's captured.
Okay.
And that's chapter 27. It's in Gathering Storm where Cad Swain figures out how to break her. And I'm actually good to move to that if you want to, because it's oddly delightful in its own way, in the way that it's written.
Yeah, I know Brandon Sanderson had said that if there was one thing he could change
Hmm.
within the parts of the story that he wrote, he wouldn't have done the spanking. He would have used some other means to break her.
Did he give an example?
No, but he just said that he doesn't like the fact that for a long time spanking has been a way of means
Mm.
to dominate women in particular, that there's just this very kind of, and I'm absolutely paraphrasing and kind of going off of how like I'm
Yeah.
interpreting what he said, but just how it's kind of a sexist thing in general. And
Mm-hmm.
even though we're talking about torturing a torturer,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, spanking is very low on the list in terms of like crimes against humanity.
Right.
But in this context, he would have wanted to go with something that wasn't a punishment specifically used in a time where it was to domineer over women. But he didn't give an example.
Yeah, as you're talking about it, I'm trying to think of like what would an alternative in this particular situation be? I actually, commend Sanderson for wanting to do something that, or change something, I guess I should say, that feels sexist and
Hmm.
possibly even misogynistic. But at the same time, in the storyline, like thinking about just from this perspective, they're kind of at their wits' end with the scariest fucking person, like maybe in the entire series. What do you do? What do you do? And if the answer is treat them like a toddler throwing a tantrum, like people used to raise their kids, I guess, by spanking them and stuff, like it worked. I mean, if you put her in the corner for timeout, would that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, from the perspective of the reader, that it's really immensely gratifying seeing
Mm-hmm.
this terrible person just break and crumble.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like, would it be as satisfying if Cad Swain just made her eat the slop that she threw on the ground, like
Yeah.
off the floor, and that's how she breaks? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Because,
Yeah.
like, going back, I can't unread the spanking part, right?
Right?
So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it would hit me the same way, but
Yeah. I was just gonna say the fact that she does it without using the power also adds something to it, almost in a plus and minus way. Like she feels like this has to be done. Cat Swain feels like this has to be done this way without using the power. But then it also kind of makes it so it falls even more in that category of how women are frequently treated in the form of punishment without magic. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
it comes down to like all of the other Aes Sedai seeing Semirhage as just this mythical being, this
Yeah.
creature of like terror. And
Yeah.
Cad Swain's like, I'm gonna humanize her. She's just a
Yeah.
person. She's just a
Yeah.
woman. And she
Yep.
kind of like does this almost. I have such a funny image in my head of how it happens, but Cad Swain kind of like trips her, like jujitsu style, like throws her down
Yes.
and grabs her by the hair. And Semirhage is just, screaming and threatening. And Cad Swain is just like very chill, like, I see. And
Mhm.
to add insult to all of this, she fills her prison room full of like the staff, like the people that have been serving
Yep.
Semirhage.
Yep.
So as these people are being ushered into the room, Semirhage, she goes from cursing them to threatening
Mhm.
them to just howling. And
Mhm.
Cad Swain's like, "Now will you eat?"
Mhm.
And I think Semirog says something to the effect of, I'll find everyone you love and feed them to each other, which is
And make you
just,
watch.
yeah, terrifying.
Wow.
But, it ends with, Cad Swain spanking her and making her eat off the floor. And she says
Yeah.
she's just a person, just a
Mhm.
person.
The line in the book where she goes after Semirog is so good. Like what you were saying, like the jujitsu move. It's Katswin grabbed Semirog by the hair and with a casual sweep of her foot knocked the woman's legs out from beneath her, dropping her to
Right?
the floor.
Isn't that
And I
just hilarious to have the
it's
mental image
so
of this elderly
yes.
woman just like,
Yes.
papa, papa?
Yes. Come in like this tall and I mean like Katswin at some point refers to Semirog is willowy, so it wasn't like that difficult, I guess, to knock this woman who's over 6 feet tall on her ass.
Well,
But
Catswain's kind of stout, like,
yeah, that's what she says. She's like, I'm stout. I got this. Short, close to the ground, low center of gravity.
Yeah.
Don't you worry. I just
Ladies
love that
out there, don't
casual
get too
sweep of
thin.
the
You have
foot.
to stay
That's
up to
right.
your fighting weight, just in case one of the
That's
Forsaken show up and you need to throw one on the ground.
You know what? That's exactly what I need to hear as I'm like eating cookies and putting on my quote unquote my body winter coat. Ah, it's fine. Going back to the idea of Cadswain making everybody see Semirog as a person, she's like, you may want to start bringing a hairbrush with you or like carrying a hairbrush around with you because, paddling her like that with your hand gets tiresome after a while. And it makes the other Aes Sedai who's been in this like terrible position smile. Like they have this solution to get the answers that they're looking for. And that has to be a bit of a relief, even if it comes at the cost of causing pain to another
Yeah.
person.
And this is another, I guess, point to where we'll have to do a Cad Swain 101 in the future.
I would love to.
She is one of the most divisive characters because clearly she's not a bad guy in the story. Like, she's not one of the Forsaken. She's not on the side of the shadow, but she's a pretty terrible person as well.
Yeah.
And had Cadsuane been anything but exactly what and who she is, this
Mm-hmm.
whole method of breaking Semirog never would have been found. So,
Right.
like, it was necessary for Cadsuane to be this kind of awful person.
Yes.
And like we said earlier, she does see a bit of herself in Semirog, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
she's able to kind of like break it down into like, well, how would you break someone like
Mm-hmm.
this? And
Mm-hmm.
it's also Cadsuane being this legendary Aes
Yes.
Sedai that
Yes, that's what I was
everyone
just
knows,
thinking. Yeah.
and they both have this kind of storybook mythology
Yep.
about them
Mm-hmm.
where if you say the name, you know who this person is, no matter who you
Mm-hmm.
are, I guess.
Yep. Their reputation precedes them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I do love that about Cat Swain, and I am absolutely down for a 101.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess this is a good thing to point out to our Discord people and our Patreon people.
Mm-hmm.
So for our Patreon people, this is just a shout out. Do check in on our Discord channel because a lot of the times when we are trying to decide what episode we're going to do for a 101, we will consult our Patreon people. I'm saying that a lot, Patreon people. Check in over there every once in a while because this is one of the perks of having you guys there.
Our topic today is a suggestion from Snakes
Yes,
and Foxes. So thank you,
yes.
Snakes and Foxes. We needed your brain power. We really did. Thank you.
Yeah. So make sure you check in on Discord because if there is something that you really want us to hear, let us know because it's a very good possibility that's what we'll choose for our 101s.
So often, like brainstorming for an idea produces so many better results, and we
Yeah.
appreciate your insight into what we could cover.
Yeah. But anyways, back to Semirog. You
Thanks.
know,
I'm glad that you did that, though. Thank you for doing that.
yeah, absolutely. She does end up getting freed by her good friend Shada Haran.
They're buddies now.
Yeah, right? And she does eventually get to use the domination band on Rand, which results in him almost killing Min.
Yep.
But Min, to her credit, gets another knife toss in and
This time, she's not at least captured in one place. She gets a nick across the cheek on Semirog.
yeah,
Semirog doesn't like it.
yeah. But I mean, this results in Rand accessing the true power instead of the one power and
Yep.
bale firing the shit out of her. So
Yep.
I mean, it's a good end to her story, I feel like. Wiped from
I
existence, never to
Yep.
be reborn again. Actually, I think you can be reborn again after Balefire.
Can you?
Yeah, because if you could be, then why wouldn't Ishamael just have someone Balefire him if he's tired of living lives over and over again, you know?
Oh, interesting.
I think he would be reborn, just not as himself.
What an interesting idea. I've always stuck to the canon that you can't come back after Balefire. Like, that's always been my understanding. But I'm intrigued if that's not actually the case. And I think you have a solid point.
Hmm.
Huh. If anyone knows,
A question for another day.
yeah, let us know. I'm really curious. Yeah. Cause like I think it's actually kind of important that she's not able to be brought back. Like we just have way too many moments where it's like and Lanfear's brought back and uh is it Bilal? Whoever. Like we have a good portion of the Forsaken who die, they just pop back up. Like the Dark One's just like, and you get a new body, and you get a new body, and off you guys go to quote unquote wreak havoc or create chaos. I don't know. I don't think they're particularly effective. They could have been
Yeah,
dropped
I
out of
mean,
the
I
story and it
don't
would have been
think the
fine.
Dark One can resurrect you after Balefire, but I think that there's a
You,
possibility of you actually coming back.
huh? Like as a person and not
Yeah,
as like a Forsaken, just in a new body kind of thing.
I think so, yeah.
I kind of like that. I like that. I like the idea of being able to kind of redeem your soul, get a fresh start.
Or maybe like the balefire sets the clock back like a certain amount of time. It's not so much
Mm,
that it's like it makes things never was, like it never happened, but after you
mm-hmm.
start erasing things from so far, like if you're setting the clock back so far, you run into all different types of paradoxes with kind of like time travel, like the grandfather paradox. Like if you go back,
Mm-hmm.
if someone killed your great 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 grandfather, are you able to be born? No.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I saw it as. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll see.
No, I really like your insight on it. I really do.
But Tracy, is there anything you would like to add? Should we wrap it up for today?
I guess the last thing that I had was the mention of Semirhage being a masochist as well as a sadist, because she's almost looking forward to being tortured when the time comes.
Yeah, because she thinks it's going to be. She's expecting something totally different.
Yeah, I think like there's something about how she was like, had they done something like put hot coals in the hollows of her elbows? And I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. Who even thinks to do that? Like she was ready for it. That's what she was expecting. She was like, slice me and dice me. I'm ready for that. Like she's almost looking forward to it. And I guess maybe she's like, she's inflicted that so often on so many other people that maybe now her curiosity level has reached to wanting to know what it feels like for herself. What a weirdo. But okay. I mean, if that's your thing,
What a weirdo, but okay, if that's your thing.
that's maybe a great place to wrap us up.
All right. Thanks for listening.
uh,
Everyone, take care, and we will see you next time.
bye.